A tight end leaves the team, and the DBs take a big step forward. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Glad to have you aboard with us here. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. So please subscribe on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Ton to get to today. The Tigers are back on the practice field on Tuesday for day 5 of fall camp. I was there. Got my notes. I'll tell you everything I saw. And we have a lot to get to. The defensive line's big day. The DB's making progress. We'll let you hear from Brian Kelly. The most interesting thing I thought he said when he met with reporters after practice on Tuesday. So we'll get to that. But I want to start with a little personnel news. You may have heard by now, and Brian Kelly confirmed it during his media availability after practice on Tuesday, that sophomore tight end Mac Markway has left the team. It was pretty evident in fall camp that Kamorian Pimpton and Trades Green had really emerged. And Mac Markway was getting reps with the twos, but it's very obvious with the physical prowess ability, pass catching ability of those two, that they were going to be hard to surpass. And what's interesting about it is Markway came to LSU out of Missouri, very highly regarded, but the Tigers signed 3 tight ends in the class a year ago. Remember, it was Mac Markway, it was Kamorian Pimpton, and it was Jackson McGowan. Well, after his freshman season, McGowan transferred to Wisconsin. Markway and Pimpton returned. And of course, LSU signed Trades Green in this class and returned Mason Taylor. Now, Mason Taylor may very well be the best tight end in college football this year. He's certainly on that short list. So it's going to be hard for any of these guys to surpass Mason Taylor for as far as starter reps. But Pimpton and Trades Green, through the first week anyway, it's been pretty clear, have made a significant move. The first day of drills, we told you Trades Green was the most impressive pass catcher. On Monday of this week, we told you it was actually Kamorian Pimpton that came away with the 2 most impressive plays of the day in the cornerback DB or the DB pass catcher drills. So Markway steps aside, and it's a little disappointing, because as a true freshman, Mac Markway played in 12 games and started in place of Mason Taylor in the win over Mississippi State. Caught 3 passes for 16 yards, had a touchdown in the Georgia State game, caught a pass in his debut against Grambling last year. And the thing about Markway that was really interesting to me when he signed is that he was very different from the other 2 guys in his class, in Jackson McGowan and Kamorian Pimpton. McGowan's more of a wide receiver, smallish frame who had to grow into it. And Pimpton was just a pass catching tight end, a long, physically gifted, receiver. Markway is your more prototypical tight end. He's the guy that you can affix to the line of scrimmage. That's another blocker, but also is a very athletic pass catcher. He looks more like Mason Taylor, more like the complete tight end, not just the flex tight end that's going to catch passes. So I think Mac Markway has a really high ceiling. I think he just also noticed his path to the field this year was going to be challenging. And, maybe, but obviously before the semester starts is when you want to go into the transfer portal to see if you can find another place to play. Obviously, being that it's after the portal deadline, he can't transfer within the SEC and be eligible. So we'll see what the future may hold for Mac Markway. But of course, LSU's got 2 young tight ends complementing Mason Taylor. They are very high on all those guys. More on that as we get through the episode today. But Mac Markway was only a piece of the personnel news. A couple other things Brian Kelly went over after practice on Tuesday when he met with the media. Xavier Thomas, who is obviously a really good player, he was Mississippi State's leading receiver a year ago. He was a freshman All-America punt returner 2 seasons ago. We've seen Xavier Thomas out at practice. He's just been limited. And he's got a heavy wrap on his right leg. Brian Kelly confirmed it's a hamstring injury, and it's mild. It's not anything severe, anything that should cause him to miss the season. But the way Brian Kelly phrased it to us was, we know what Xavier Thomas can do, and he's going to be important for LSU come football Saturday. So they didn't want to push him. It's absolutely 100% the right thing to do. You know what Xavier Thomas is, what he's going to bring to your offense and to your special team. So there's no reason to push him on day 5 in fall camp. Let him get the hamstring right. And then the other 2 players who have been notably absent that we've been wondering why are defensive tackle Jalen Lee and defensive end Braden Swinson. Now, we heard it was academic and that they were working on coursework. Well, Brian Kelly confirmed exactly what it was. So Lee and Swinson are both on track to graduate, and they're taking a summer session Spanish class, which is their final course requirement to graduate. So those 2 are in line to finish their coursework to graduate. And Brian Kelly said Monday is when they're expected to rejoin the team. But in the meantime, this was interesting. So the NCAA, of course, mandates an acclimation period. So if a player's coming off of injury or joins a team late, they have to go through so many days of a ramp up before they can go full bore with the team. And obviously what LSU has been doing is working out for portion of the practice indoors and then coming outdoors, and every day ramping up outdoors from 45 minutes to an hour 5 minutes, hour 15, and so on. And what Brian Kelly said that Lee and Swinson are doing is they're going to class during the day and they're coming back at night, and they're working out with assistant coaches and strength and conditioning staff members and trainers to make sure they're getting all of that work in. And so they're going through their acclimation period now. So Monday, when they're ready to go, they're not beginning an acclimation period. They're ready to rejoin their teams, their team. And Lee and Swinson figure to be major factors on that defensive line for LSU this year. That's something we're going to delve into today, because when I watched the offensive and defensive line drills again on Tuesday, there was a pretty notable difference from Monday, just from Monday to Tuesday. And I think it's a good sign for LSU, and we're going to delve into all of that. So Mac Markway no longer with the Tigers. Xavier Thomas, hamstring injury. Lee and Swinson should be back with the team on Monday. One other note, defensive lineman Preston Hickey, Preston Hickey is no longer with the team as well. Now, Brian Kelly did not confirm that, did not have a chance to ask him, but have had that confirmed. And Preston Hickey's not been at practice now the last couple of days. So Hickey, you might remember from the North Shore, started his college career at Oklahoma State, transferred to LSU as a preferred walk-on, was there a year ago, and then obviously went through spring with LSU. And I think with the addition of JVR Suggs, Sean Washington obviously coming in from JUCO, Dominic McKinley, and Gio Paez running with the first team. It's I think pretty evident how deep Preston Hickey was buried on that depth chart, and how much room maybe he has to go to climb that depth chart. So just a few personnel notes as we push off from the dock here. I do want to, as we continue, get through my practice notes. And we did get to see 2 team periods. I watched a lot of offensive defensive line drills as well. And I want to delve into some of that. Some notable changes as far as guys running with the first team. We saw a nickel package for the first time, and an interesting guy out there running with the first team when they went nickel. We'll talk about that as we continue. Glad you're with us here. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Y'all, I love Major League Baseball. You know that if you listen to the show, and you know that about me. Yankee fan. I know a lot of people point the finger and say front runner. Bottom line is, as a kid, my dad had us in Yankees footy pajamas. He grew up in New Orleans in the 50s and 60s as a Yankee fan because it was basically the only games they got. He loved Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, so he raised me a Yankee fan as well, and loved the team. A couple years ago for my 40th birthday, my wife and I went up to New York City. You know what we did? Went to Yankee Stadium and watched the Yankees play the Astros. Last Monday, you know where I was. I was in Houston watching the Astros against the Pirates. I love going to Major League Baseball games, and Game Time helps you do that. Any day you want to get out to the ballpark. The smell of the grass, the pop of the mitt, the crack of the bat, the taste of the dog, the sip of the beer. There's just nothing like being at a Major League Baseball game. And the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase is Game Time. You can see the view from your seat on your phone before you buy. They have all-in pricing, so you know your total cost up front. It's not like, oh, there's the price, and once you hit the button, here's 8 more fees. You can buy tickets in seconds with 2 apps. There's just so many ways to save on tickets as well, no matter when you buy. They got last-minute tickets right up to the start of the event. You'll even see prices decline the closer you get to the event. They've got zone deals where you pick the section, and then Game Time picks the seats, which can be big savings for you. Trust me, if you love going to the ballpark, you need to discover Game Time if you haven't yet. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. It's Game Time. All right, so after the personnel notes, let's get to what we saw on the field. As we were walking in, and the media got about an hour with LSU outdoors on Tuesday, and as we were walking in, the team was in an 11-on-11 period. And literally, the first play that we saw, I'm not saying it was the first play of the day, but it was the first play that we saw, was Garrett Nussmeier throwing a touchdown pass to Chris Hilton on a deep slant over the middle that he foot raced to the end zone and scored. It's so interesting because if you have the time or interest, go back to the first practice report that we did. And I told you it was interesting because Shelton Sampson had a big day. Travis Green had a big day. CJ Daniels, Kyron Lacey popped. I went over my notes, and Chris Hilton wasn't targeted one time the first day. The last 2 days, Chris Hilton's been all over the field. And it was certainly that case on Tuesday as Chris Hilton made some really big plays. Another great catch in 7-on-7 drills where a beautiful pass on a rope from Garrett Nussmeier. But that big play from Hilton was awesome to see. It was interesting because after the first 3 plays that we saw of team, Ricky Collins went in and took 2 reps with the ones. He took 5 reps in all, but the first 2 were with the ones, and then he ran 3 reps as the 2s went in. The first 2 reps with the ones, it was a run with John Emery and a beautiful pancake block by DJ Chester. And then the second play was another running play. But it was interesting to Caleb Jackson, by the way. But it was interesting to see Ricky Collins get a few reps with that first team. The 2s went in, and the first play with the 2s, Ricky Collins threw what, in my opinion, was his best ball of camp. It was a play action, a look down the right sideline, 35, 40 yards downfield, an absolute rope over the defender, hit Kyle Parker right in the hands, in stride, and Parker dropped it. Would have been a walk-in touchdown for Kyle Parker, but a big drop. Now, Parker had 2 really big catches in the team period on Monday, but that was a big drop there on Tuesday. Some other takeaways from the team periods. The cornerback, by the way, that Kyle Parker beat was Jair Brown. More on him in a moment. But in the 2 team periods we saw, what was so interesting is that at the end of both team periods, we saw the defense come away with a sack. I should also mention that there were referees at practice on Tuesday. So in the team periods, there were referees calling the game, or calling the practice, I should say. But Sean Washington had a sack to wrap up the first team period we saw. And Gio Paez had a sack on the final play we saw of the day, sort of a blow up the launch pad type sack coming right up the middle. But you know what else was interesting? And this is the point, I think, that if you're an LSU fan, you might come away with this most encouraged by. The offense has made so many plays. I mentioned the Nussmeier TD to Hilton on the first play we saw. Beautiful pitch and catch to Mason Taylor over the middle as Nussmeier was going through his progressions. I mentioned, Kyle Parker on the deep ball would have been a walk-in touchdown, but he dropped it. And we can go through each practice that we've seen. And if you've been following our practice reports, I've shared this with you. The offense has made tons of plays. But it is also undeniable that the secondary is getting theirs too. There was a play where Sage Ryan was running with Shelton Sampson and had a beautiful pass breakup 30, 40 yards downfield. PJ Woodland, true freshman, was matched up with Kyron Lacey in one of the team periods. They throw about a 10-yard, 15-yard out to Kyron Lacey as he's heading toward the sideline. And PJ Woodland did a beautiful job pinning Kyron Lacey against the sideline and forcing an incompletion. I mentioned the 2 sacks as well. The point is, Stamps in 7-on-7. Ashton Stamps had a pass breakup. I told you Ashton Stamps has picked off Garrett Nussmeier twice already in team drills so far in fall camp. My point is, yes, the offense is making plays, but the defense, and in particular the secondary, is getting theirs as well. Now, I want to play this soundbite for you. This was Brian Kelly after practice on Tuesday, and he was asked specifically about PJ Woodland and Ashton Stamps making plays. And look, this is a long answer. It's 1 minute and 23 seconds. I'm just being very candid, but I'm hoping you'll listen to the whole thing, because I think not only is this true with the secondary, I think what you're about to hear Brian Kelly say is a representation of what we've seen from the defense as a whole throughout this fall camp. So I'm going to play this for you. Again, this is Brian Kelly on Tuesday, asked about the progression that Ashton Stamps and PJ Woodland have made.
We've put together some good periods of time. There's no doubt that progress is being made, but not to the point where it's championship level play. And, I think it's going to be a journey for those guys in particular that we'll look for them to continue to put like practices together instead of like a good period and then a not so good period. And the great part about it is both of them clearly know what they need to do, and they're working really hard at it. So, and they're not the only two. There's a number of guys that are in that category of trying to do what is expected of them and execute when they need to execute, when it's called upon. Some of them are, below the line right now, but I can see this uptick of performance like you can from a lot of those guys. And I would just say that after 5 practices, there's really good signs, but we got a ways to go.
5 practices. It's 5 practices, and there's really good signs. But there's signs they're getting better. Yes, you're looking for consistency, but you have to consider where you were. And where you were was literally the worst defense in the history of the program. And so, yes, you want these reps, these good reps to become good periods, to become good practices altogether. And you want to find that consistency. You got 3 more weeks of camp to sort that out before you got to go play for real. And this is 5 practices in. How much better can they be? I should mention, I did go watch some of the defense as well when the defense went nickel. And this might be of interest to some because we saw Jair Brown when LSU went nickel. It was interesting because Whit Weeks went on the field. Greg Penn came off. So your linebackers were Perkins and Whit Weeks with the first team, and Jair Brown was your nickel. Your second team nickel, by the way, was PJ Woodland, which is pretty good evidence that even if PJ Woodland doesn't win a starting job as one of the corners, that they have him on the 2 deep, both at corner and at nickel, and that's a guy that's going to play. So get used to seeing number 11 out there. Okay, I also got to keep a pretty close eye on the offensive and defensive lines. We'll get to that in a second. Of course, thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On College Football podcast. My buddy Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season, that ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football, expanded playoffs, and so much more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll wrap up Locked On LSU next, talking about the offensive and defensive line, and a pretty good day for the interior defensive players. As we put a button here on the show today, for the second consecutive day, I went and kept an eye on the offensive and defensive line whenever they went through their pass rush set. So I explained this drill on yesterday's episode, but if you weren't here, effectively the 5 offensive linemen line up, but it's a one-on-one pass rush drill. So, for example, when Will Campbell lined up, he went against Paris Shand. Garrett Dellinger went against Sean Washington. DJ Chester went against Gio Paez. Miles Frazier went against Jacobian Guillory. Emory Jones went against Savion Jones. And I told you yesterday that when the first team, the starters, went out there, the starting offensive line won every rep. Today, Will Campbell and Garrett Dellinger won their reps. Gio Paez beat DJ Chester. Jacobian Guillory bull rushed Miles Frazier, but didn't get to the quarterback. So it was really like a push. And then Savion Jones had a win against Emory Jones. So it was 2 wins for each and a push. 50-50 in that first set. When the second team went, Tyree Adams, who, by the way, is quietly having a, remember this, Tyree Adams quietly is having a really good camp as Will Campbell's number 2. I've often said, if, knock on wood, but if anything were to happen to Will Campbell, Emory Jones would just kick over and play left tackle. And that may be what they do. But Tyree Adams is more than holding his own as an athletic left tackle, as the second team left tackle. They've moved Bordelon to right guard, where he was playing some left tackle last year. But Tyree Adams looks good. Tyree Adams had a really nice rep win against Deshaun Womack. But then Dominic McKinley went out there, the true freshman, and won his rep against Paul Mabenga. Then JVR Suggs won his rep against Cohen Eccles. Then Bo Bordelon had a holding call on his rep against Ahmad Bro. So Ahmad Bro won that one. And then we saw Weston Davis win his rep against Dylan Carpenter. So all that to say, the first unit was split 50-50. 2 wins, 2 losses, and a push. The second unit, the defense won 2 of the reps, and there was a push, and the offense won 2 of the reps. So it was a straight 50-50 push. The third unit that went out there were 3 pushes, and then each team had a win. So Ori Williams had a really nice win against Kalaj Cobbins, who y'all are going to hear me say this a ton. Remember the name Kalaj Cobbins. He's a freshman edge. He's wearing number 48, 6'2", 233 out of Destrehan. He has been almost unguardable. Unblockable. He gets sacks every day, and he has been a terror off the edge. And Ori Williams had a really nice win against Kalaj Cobbins. Again, with the third unit, it was a win for the offense, a win for the defense. Kimo Makanaole got a win against Ethan Callaway, who continues to struggle. And then there were 3 pushes. The ones went back out there, and it was 3-2 for the offense. Will Campbell won his rep against Paris Shand, no surprise. Garrett Dellinger had a dominant win against Dom McKinley, and put Dom McKinley on the ground. It's just, you got a 4-year starter against a true freshman. It was a little unfair, even despite the size difference. Another bull rush from Jacobian Guillory. He got a win against DJ Chester. Miles Frazier had a really nice win against Gio Paez, which drew the ire of Bo Davis. And then Emory Jones got revenge and beat Savion Jones on that rep. Point is, like, every rep we tracked, I tracked 30 reps. The first, second, third unit each went twice. There were 30 reps. and it was split almost right down the middle. Remember the Brian Kelly cut that I just played for you. And when I played it, yes, he was talking about defensive backs. But when we went into it, I told you, extrapolate this over the entire defense because I think it is representative. Every day, the defense is going against a really good offense. They are challenged by a really good offense. And they're getting wins. They're not winning all of them. They're not even winning a majority of them. But they're winning enough reps to say they're improving. How much more can they improve over the next 3 weeks? That's going to be a gigantic question. And look, you got a gigantic challenge. I mean, of course, there's no Caleb Williams, but it's still Lincoln Riley that's going to be calling plays. It's still going to be USC with a ton of talent on the offensive side. It's going to be a big challenge for LSU in the opener. But that defense is most definitely trending in the right direction. Long way to go, but trending in the right direction. Okay, y'all, that's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked On LSU. Of course, for your second listen, go check out Locked On College Football. From NIL deals to the never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't even need to search for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, y'all, Wednesday, Tigers are back on the practice field. Media has full availability as well. And then we speak to Joe Sloan after. So make sure you're here for tomorrow's episode. I'll have the full practice report when LSU goes full pads, by the way, for the first time on Wednesday. I'll have your full practice report. And, of course, everything that Joe Sloan had to say for his media availability. We're looking forward to seeing you then. Until then, remember, if you're on podcast, please subscribe, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we go live. Until next time, it is Locked On LSU, your team every day.